once again. Thank you all for joining us. This is Nuance, and I'm Mike Scala, joined as always by Jay Carter. We'll be speaking of proposed term limits for Supreme Court justices, but I'd like to introduce our co-host. He is the chair of BLM Tokyo and hip-hop artist known as Timid. What's going on, Jay?
Um, just having a good morning so far. It's been very chill. It's finally a little bit cooler in the morning, so at least these couple of days. In the afternoon, all bets are off, but right now it's all right. So, how about yourself?
I am doing well. Yes, weather here hasn't been too bad. We've been in the 80s. I think we'd say a nice, comfortable temperature and not the heat wave that we had experienced earlier in the summer. So,
Yeah, I got up yesterday at like 6:30 a.m. and went for a walk because I was like, this is gonna be the coolest part of the day. Let me get in some exercise. And it was already 80 plus with like 80% humidity, but it was still the coolest part of the day.
okay. Well, speaking of cool, I guess, I'm feeling cool to get a phone call here. Who's this? New York. Oh, look at this. I think I'm being polled. Maybe. I don't know. Some kind of data thing. I'll ignore that. So I'm saying. But not everyone answers the polls, right? Uh,
Right?
but
Maybe they wanted to be on Nuance.
maybe. That would have been funny. Take the poll live on Nuance, right?
Right.
Uh, Wanted to take the moment to announce that it's going to be exclusive for our Nuance listeners.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes,
Exclusive.
I am finally dropping the first single for my new project. It's called Bring Raucous Back, featuring the legendary Cool G Rap, and it will come out on August 23rd. So under a month from now, first
Dope.
come out. And I am very excited about that. As you know, it's been a long time coming working on this new music.
Yeah, congratulations. I know how much you've been working on it and what you put into it. So yeah.
Yes. And so let's take this moment to create a little bit of content. We'll be doing more of this, especially when it comes out. We got to get these short form videos ready for TikTok and whatnot. So, without going into too much depth here, I do want to talk a little bit about how the collaboration came about with Cool G Rap.
Right.
It's actually a long time in the making. Believe it or not, when I was working on my first solo project in about 2005, I think, I was speaking with Domingo. We know him as a storied producer in hip hop. We've done some work with him.
Shout
And
out Domingo.
yes, I asked him at the time who might be a good guest to get on the album I was working on. And he mentioned Cool G Rap. And I said, oh, okay, because he had the connect. He was doing stuff with him at the time.
Hmm.
And he said he would be a good feature. And I said, yeah, that would be great. And so we had begun those conversations, but nothing really materialized from that, right? But then it was something that was always kind of in the back of my head as I went on. And fast forward now to working on this new project, I recorded this song called Bring Raucous Back. Of course, I had done the deal with Raucous and I did this story track, kind of going through the history of the label and how happy I was to be a part of that history as an artist who was signed to their digital venture that they did at the time. So,
Right, Rockets 50.
yes, so I kind of talked all about that and what Raucous on the whole meant to hip hop and the music industry, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
me shouting them out, showing them some love, shining a spotlight on Raucous and what I thought was an important moment, an important movement in hip hop culture. So the song was all about that. It didn't have anyone on it but me, right? Initially, I was shouting out some Raucous artists, giving the story. I had a couple verses, the hook, and everything. Well, I was on social media and I saw Domingo was posting with Cool G Rap. He was doing some more work with Cool G Rap. Now, don't forget, this is over 10 years later, right? Like 12,
Right.
20 years after the fact. But he's still doing work with Cool G Rap. And Cool G Rap happened to be a Raucous artist. In fact, he was an artist I shouted out on the song. And so I didn't create the song with him as a feature in mind. But when I saw that he was working on with Cool G Rap, I said, you know what? I always wanted to to do that song with him, and I was thinking maybe I can do a remix of the song and put some raucous artists on it or whatever. I was like, let me just hit Domingo up and see what can come of this.
Hmm.
So I hit him up and I was like, yeah, hey, listen, I got this raucous song. I see you're doing more work with G-Rap. Do you think we could set something up? And so he put me in touch directly with Cool G-Rap, and we chopped it up and we worked it out where he was gonna get on the song. And it became a little bit of a different song because I had two verses on mine originally. And so I took my first verse off and I put him on the second verse. And when it comes out, you'll hear more. Everyone out there will hear more about what it's all about. But the basic premise is I'm giving the story of Raucous, and I'm saying here's Cool G Rap, an original Raucous artist, providing some of that flavor that I'm referencing on my part. So it all kind of came together well at the end, and I'm glad that it took as long as it did. Right, it was all those years in the making because I think this came out a lot better than it would have had I done the song with him back then.
Mm. Yeah, that sometimes yeah, I mean, it works like that. It can take time, but in that time, you worked a little bit more on your craft. You got a little bit more experience with it, probably settling a little bit better in on, how you deliver something. And so, yeah, it could come out a little bit better at that time as well. So, yeah, that's what's up. That's dope. Sometimes these things you meet artists, you talk to artists, and it's always like, yeah, yeah, let's do something, or I want to do something, and we can hook it up. And then there's a lot of talk, and it just never happens, or something falls apart. So it's good that it came together.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because I was thinking about that, not just with that song. There are other songs I'll be releasing as part of this new project. There are other songs that I'm going to be putting out now that I started thinking about years ago. And maybe I
Mm,
had the concept for it a long time ago, or maybe I thought about doing a song with someone, not just with G-Rap, but some other people on there, where it was kind of in the back of my head all this time. And then when I went back to record my new project, digging up these old ideas sometimes they're just coming to me as I'm recording, as I'm working, right? These things that are kind of like rattling around in my head might pop back up into the forefront. Like, oh yeah, wait a minute, I had this. What about this? And it's just
mm,
funny now looking at the final product, thinking, wow, I kind of conceptualized a lot of this years ago in some form or fashion, right? And it's just materializing now.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So how many tracks are on the album?
So there's 9 that we're going to be putting out on the album. I recorded, believe it or not, 30. I went and counted. I recorded 30 songs, but for all different things. I mean, what I was doing is I was giving myself the space to create. So when I would record something, it wasn't necessarily a song for the album. I mean,
Right.
for example, our boy Isaac, Addabo, right? He would come through to New York. I would be down in DC where he's at. And sometimes we would just record some things. And it wasn't even a matter of, this is going to be for my project, for your project. It's just, we're just collaborating on some music. And then some of those songs that we recorded ended up on his project he put out, right? So you can get them on Spotify now as iDog, right? His artist name. So some of them we didn't even use, right? It's just kind of that kind of thing where we're just recording and then seeing what we want to do with it. Sometimes I might just record a verse and a hook, or just a hook, or just a verse, and see, am I going to do something with this? Am I not? Is this going to build into something else? Sometimes I'll record a couple of verses and then think, like in the case of Bring Raucous back, right? Oh, the song would be even better if I added such and such to it. Maybe take one of my verses off. Maybe have 3 verses. Maybe just dial it back to 2. Maybe put a singer on there. So it's like you kind of go through these different iterations of it, and as you realize that you're going to be using, or you want to go forward with certain songs, then you put more into them, right? You put more meat on the bones. And so
Mm-hmm.
these 9 songs are the ones that I finished and thought should be out on the album, but that was out of a selection of 30 recordings that I made, that was, like, I guess you said the first draft, right? Or just me
Right.
getting on the mic and seeing what I wanted to do.
And I think that's important that when you said giving yourself space to create, that's important. Because sometimes you just need that outlet. And that helps bring up other things that
Yeah.
gets the juices flowing and gets ideas coming and churning and whatnot. And even writing for those things to create helps, you know, uh, open the floodgates for more writing. And so
Yeah.
I've got tons of different verses that are just sitting around that I recorded doing the
Right.
same thing, giving myself space to create, or you just have that inspiration to do something, and it just
It takes
helps you.
pressure off of yourself. And if I were to critique myself as an artist back in the day, I think I spent too much time promoting myself. Of course, I was trying to be my own manager and everything else. And so, I was always trying to get gigs. And then there was the MySpace days, you're always trying to put stuff out, the bulletins and posting up new songs and whatever, just trying to keep eyes on your brand.
Mm.
So it's building that brand. But if you're spending all your time doing that, you might not be giving yourself enough space to actually create as an artist. And I don't think I was doing that for myself. I was living in a space where everything I created at the time was going to be
Put out.
released.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
it was
right,
going to be released. It was going to be for this album or for this next MySpace drop or whatever it was going to be. But I created it with the intention of putting it out. And
right,
that's putting too much pressure on yourself because everything you do then has to be good. I mean, especially if you want to put out great material. Now you're you don't have the freedom to just try things out or
right,
to just relax a little bit and just create as an artist, right? Because there's a difference between being an artist and being in commerce, right? If you want to be truly a great artist in commerce, you can't focus only on the commerce. You still have to give yourself time to be that artist. And artists
right,
experiment, right? That's what an artist is. It's thinking outside the box, trying something different. It might not always work. It shouldn't always work. And part of the skill is knowing how to edit yourself. But you can't edit yourself if you don't give yourself enough source material to edit, right? If it's
right.
just everything that you do has to be released, it's way too much pressure. And you're not going to get your best work that way. You're not going to take chances. You're not going to be relaxed enough. You know what I mean? I used
Mm.
to watch artists say that. I recorded this album. I recorded 100 songs for whatever. I'm like, man, that sounds so fake. I didn't believe it. I thought it was stupid. But now I
Mm.
kind of understand more of where that's coming from. It's think about a painter, even right. You want to go out there. Is a good painter, is a great painter going to sell everything that they paint? Probably not. They might be out
Right,
every day. They might just have the canvas, might just be splashing, trying different things. And oh, this is something, right? And then that's where you find the greatness in that.
right,
But you need to be able to just live, breathe, right?
right.
Have space to just do things, try things, and then you'll be able to say, okay, I've got all this to choose from. Now I can narrow it down to the best material.
Absolutely, absolutely. And uh, there'd be times where you just sit and you write something and just you write it. It doesn't even you don't even save it. You go
Yeah,
ahead and delete it or erase it. Same with beats. I've gone through times where I would spend an hour like putting a beat together and just delete it because it wasn't sounding as good as I thought it should be or what I wanted. And just like, but the process of going through it, the exercise of flexing that creative muscle is
right.
all valuable.
Right. And then it serves as a form of therapy, even, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Getting on a mic is, and it's not with the intention of releasing it. So you don't have to release it. It just takes so much pressure off you if you can just get on a mic and record something. And don't forget, all this time I'm working as a lawyer, I'm in politics. So this is going on over the past several years. I'm just
Hmm.
recording in my spare time. And it's serving as a creative outlet for me. And I don't have that pressure of everything I do is going to be heard or everything I do has to come out. No, because if you have that pressure, then you're overthinking, right? And then you might not get your best. So I wasn't overthinking. I was just getting on the mic and just doing what I felt. And then I got to a point where I was like, you know what? These songs here, I think people should hear.
Right, right, right.
So that's probably
So
the best way to do it. But you need to discipline yourself. I mean, I see, for example, I think it was Jerry Seinfeld. I see comedians talking about this. This is kind of the same type of deal. You should set time for yourself to write jokes if you're a comedian every day. It doesn't mean that all those jokes are going to be in your act. They shouldn't be. But you want to create as much as possible to then narrow it down to something you think is good, right?
right, right. Yeah, and that's absolutely right. Um, so well, that's what's up. It's finally here, finally coming out. What's the name of the album? Have you
Name of the album is Mike Scholar. It's a play on my real name and my professional background. Obviously, my name is Mike Scholar, so it's kind of a self-titled album, but it's M-I-C, Mike as in microphone, and
right?
Scholar, Scholar, because that plays obviously on me being an MC and an attorney, right? Law school
Mhm.
graduate. And so it works on multiple levels. It's kind of funny. It's like, wow, my name really did fit who I became as a person professionally, right? Mike Scholar kind of encompasses all of what I'm doing.
True, true, true.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to people hearing that. We're planning on the album coming out in the fall, so not too much after the single, right? But the single does come out August 23rd, and it'll be available everywhere: Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your music, you'll be able to catch that. And looking forward to it. The album is political in a way that you probably haven't heard political rap, right? When you think of political rap, you think of people just rapping about political topics. That's there,
Mm.
but this is coming from the experience of someone who has actually been in politics, which I'm not sure has been done before. Have you heard a hip hop album from someone rapping about their experience in politics? I mean, I think it's definitely a fresh take on political rap.
Yeah, I haven't heard. I don't think I've heard anything. Has whatchamacallit, Mayor Baraka put out anything since being elected?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm not too familiar with his music. He did rap music? I know that he was the voice on the Lauryn Hill album. He was a teacher on the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. I know he did spoken word. Not too familiar with his artistic output beyond that.
Yeah, I thought he was he did do spoken word. He was on Lauryn Hill's thing, poems.
Yeah,
I don't know, did he do verses though?
I haven't heard. I know that the current lieutenant governor of New York was a rapper.
Really?
Yeah,
Who was that?
Antonio Delgado, his name is.
What
He
was his
rapped
rap name?
AD the Voice.
Was he any good?
Not really.
Shots fired. Oh, it's gonna be some
Uh,
rap beef now.
I actually put out a song dissing him once.
Oh, snap. It's gonna be some rap beef. You're gonna make him dust off the mic.
Hey, I mean, listen, that would be good for hip hop, but no, that was when he was running for Congress, and I had a client that they tried knocking off the ballot, and they were kind of sneaky in their tactics. I would say they tried to change the law to
Mm,
make it so that she would not qualify for the ballot, even though that she did, and they tried using their powerful influences to do that.
mm.
So people were telling me on the campaign, hey, you should put out a song talking about that. And so I did at the time. And the campaign tweeted it out back in 2018. So it wasn't really just to him, but it kind of was because he was at the forefront of what was going on. Yeah.
Right. Did he respond though?
I don't think he did. No, no. People were talking about it though. Some
Missed opportunity.
yeah, it would have been nice, right? Some other people were getting in on it on Twitter, and there was some back and forth on it, but I don't think he said anything about it.
Scared. Get in the booth, Delgado. What up?
Yeah, the thing was this: I don't think he wanted to admit that he was behind the shenanigans. He wanted to look like he was an innocent bystander in all this, while people just happened to try to change the law to knock her off the ballot. But it was
Right.
clearly coming from his camp.
Get in the booth, Delgado. We want all the smoke.
That was the line in the song. It was in 2018. I said, "Is 2018 AD? How are you going to deprive their voice?" That was a play on AD, the voice.
Mm, You got bars like that, AD, the voice.
That's what I'm saying. There's no shade, but he did not have bars like that.
He did not know shade, but he did not have bars like that. It sounds like shade to me.
No, it's just speaking facts. That's all it is. It's just
Ooh, oh,
not. It's not meant to disparage. It's just meant to be honest. He did much better as lieutenant governor of New York.
oh, snap.
Well,
Yo, I think he's got to battle you now. I think he's got to come out and battle now.
listen, it would be a great thing. Do it for charity, raise some money for some good causes. Why not?
I'm just saying, you can do it on stage, a public stage in Rockaway or something, or let's get some diss tracks popping.
I feel like
Make
you're
it happen.
instigating right now.
I'm
That's okay.
instigating. Yes, I want to see it. Let's go.
All right. Well, Speaking of seeing it, what we did see this past week was the result of the poll, not a Nuance poll for once, but this was put out by Senator Addabo here in South Queens. And he asked his constituents a number of questions regarding local issues. The one that we're most interested in is, do you support QueensLink or QueensWay, right? Full disclosure, I serve in a volunteer capacity as counsel and legal advisor to QueensLink. That is the plan to reactivate the Rockaway Beach line for transit, also leaving room for a park component, not saying that there needs to be a park everywhere. We've got plenty of park space in Queens, but if communities along the right of way want park space, there is ample room to create trails and whatever else they want. So for those saying that it has to be only a park, it doesn't need to be only a park, you can do both. And the QueensWay, they're the ones saying it needs to be a park. Many, such as myself, have posited it's primarily because they don't want the train. And so they're saying we want a park, because when we come and we say we can have both and they still say no, well, I think that's revealing about what their true motives might be. So don't take it from me, right? Take it from the constituents. Senator Addabo put out this poll saying, whose side are you on? QueensLink or QueensWay? And the results are resounding district-wide. And this is a poll, by the way, of 523 constituents. So quite a few people here in this poll. 75% QueensLink, 22% QueensWay, 3% said neither.
That is a pretty decisive result there.
It's a knockout blow, is what it is. Now, that 3% is also interesting because there is also this contingent, this group, I guess you can say, who stand for no way, or I guess that's what they call themselves. They don't want QueensWay, they don't want QueensLink. They're saying do nothing. We want to keep it the way it is, which is just an abandoned train line. Don't build anything there, right? So they're the no ways, I guess. It shows here only 3%, according to this poll. So not a very big group numerically, right? 75% saying they want the QueensLink. And that is the logical choice, let's face it. You're talking about restoring transit, which is so important to South Queens. The Rockaways in particular have the longest commutes in the whole country. And people throughout South Queens suffer from this. We're cut off from so much economic growth and activity by being geographically isolated as we are. And as we say, there's plenty of room to do parks as well. Queens already, by the way, has more parkland than any other borough. But if you want more, we got the space, right? So this isn't an either or. This is, we can have it all. Why wouldn't we? It makes perfect sense. Now, I also wanted to break down really quickly the neighborhood by neighborhood results. Why? Because this isn't a matter of some constituents in some part of the district voting overwhelmingly for QueensLink, let's say, and not being so strong elsewhere to skew the numbers. These numbers are pretty consistent throughout the district, neighborhood by neighborhood. And that also is important because, for example, people would say, well, in Forest Hills, you face your biggest opposition. They don't want you there. Well, who's they? Are there some powerful or loud voices providing opposition? Sure. But again, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at what the people on the whole are asking for. In Forest Hills, 77% QueensLink, 21% QueensWay. That's bigger than the actual overall average, right? We said 75% for the whole district. It's 77% in Forest Hills, which is where they say where opposition comes from. That's where Forest Park is. That's where they say the Little League field is, where some people claim the train is going to interfere with, although it's certainly doable to not interfere with that. I think some people use that as a scare tactic. We have plans that don't interfere with the Little League, but people will say, oh, how are you going to do that to Forest Hills? Again, this is not a close call here. This is a landslide. And we can go down the list. Ozone Park, 80%. Richmond Hill, 65%. South Richmond Hill, 85%. Woodhaven, 77%. Regal Park, 69%. Middle Village, 70%. Again, Forest Hill, 77%. Glendale, 77%. And one of the biggest results here, Howard Beach, 80% for the QueensLink. So again, for those saying that, well, in Howard Beach, they're not going to want it because they don't want anything there. 80% of the constituents who answered this poll said they want the QueensLink, which is transit. So
the question becomes, what is the city going to do? Are they going to heed that this is what the people are asking?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually on us to push this, right? Because we get the narratives and people will say, you're not going to get it because these people are against it. Well, now we have data to show that that's a lie or that was misinformed, to be charitable, right? So it is on us. Now, this is the senator's poll. And to be fair, we don't know how the senator is going to react to this either. Hopefully, he heeds what the people have to say and comes out stronger for the QueensLink. But regardless of what the senator here does, this is a city issue in that the right of way is owned by the city. And so it is up to the mayor on some level to put his weight behind this. It's up to the city council on some level to put their weight behind it. Now, it isn't only a city issue because when we talk about transit, we're talking about the MTA. And so we need buy-in from the state. We even need some buy-in from the federal government, right? So this is really can be traveling across governmental lines here. But the bottom line, not to get ahead of ourselves on the show, but the bottom line here is the people of South Queens overwhelmingly want QueensLink and overwhelmingly reject the QueensWay. And I would suggest that those making decisions respond accordingly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if there's carrying out the will of the people, it would seem that this is what the people want. At least if this poll, according to this poll, if we can extrapolate that to the larger population.
Right.
So,
And again, we're talking about over 500 people who are constituents of the senator who answered the poll, right? So it's not like
right.
we found people out of state or out of district and say, hey, go flood this guy's website with it. I mean, these are people who are constituents of his, who live in his
And
district.
was he a supporter of the poll beforehand? Of the QueensLink beforehand?
To be honest, he kind of straddled the line a little bit, which I think maybe is why he wanted to put this poll out to kind of get a better sense of what his constituents wanted. He has been a supporter of certain things that we've asked for. For example, when we call for an environmental study, which is a necessary part of the legal process to move our project forward, he has called for that. Right? And he signed on to letters saying that this needs to be considered, right? But I think he stopped short of outright endorsing QueensLink over QueensWay. Now I hope that this will change his mind a little bit, change everyone's mind. People who think QueensWay has all support, again, let's not detract from the fact they have some powerful backers. Yes, the mayor has been a proponent. The mayor has allocated money to build a section of it, a stretch of it, right? But that doesn't conclude the narrative. And we've been told all along, even as they build a park component, they're holding space for transit, right? Some people are dubious about that because we know some people who are behind these designs don't want the train, but this is what we've been told. And if that is true, then that first park space that you create really isn't QueensWay. That's the first phase of the QueensLink, because we're saying trails plus rails, both. And
right.
So we can have both here, and that's what the people want.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked if he was a known proponent of the QueensLink ahead of time is that it could indicate that there would be a skewed poll, right? Because if he's for it, then his supporters might also lean that way. But if he's been neutral and hasn't given any sort of specifics on it, then his followers or supporters haven't made a decision either way potentially, and it'd be more of a unbiased result.
He didn't tip the scale one way or another.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. And he has tried to.
Yeah, because for example, if you put a poll out, right, it's gonna overwhelmingly be people supporting it because they know your position or they're people that you're connected with. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think so that indicates that there is even it's a stronger indication of public support when it comes out like this, where it's unbiased.
Yeah. Can I put this up on the screen here? Those want to take a look. It is on my Instagram as well as my Facebook. But for those watching the live stream right now, let's see, we'll do a quick share screen on this so people can see the breakdowns. Do you have it on your screen there?
Do I have it on my screen? I do.
Okay, there you see it. Again, Howard Beach 80%, Ozone Park 81% for another part of Ozone Park. So these numbers aren't lying. This is also consistent, by the way, with what we see when we're in the streets, when we talk to people. So
Right. When you're
I
in
think it's
these
powerful.
streets.
I think having this kind of data is powerful and speaks volumes, right? Because there are
Sure,
people that say,
sure.
well, it's a done deal. Well, so if you can tell me it's a done deal, meaning you're just going to build the QueensWay and not build the QueensLink, are you saying then that you're doing so, even though most of the people clearly wholeheartedly disagree with you? I mean, that's going to
Mhm.
have relevance even going into this mayor's race, right? We saw Brad Lander, the city controller, announce he's running for mayor today in the primary against Eric Adams next year. We saw a senator, I think Zelnor Myrie, his name is. You see Scott Stringer. You see others getting into the mix here. It looks like we're going to have a competitive primary election for mayor next year.
Mm.
Well, stuff like this needs to be considered, right? If you're running for mayor,
Right. Yeah.
you're putting your platform together. Are you going to support something that's overwhelmingly popular or that is deeply unpopular? In fact, now I think going forward, whenever QueensWay is brought up, the words "the deeply unpopular" should precede it, right? Deeply unpopular QueensWay, because that's what we're looking at here. I mean, this isn't a close call, right? This is a trouncing, right? This is like a first round KO. So
Mm.
anyone
Mm.
running for mayor needs to take heed. Mayor Adams needs to take heed, right? Are you going with the people or not? You say you're a man of the people. Well, this
Mm.
is how you show it, because if you don't, you're backing a deeply unpopular plan.
Mm. Talk to him.
Well,
Talk to
all right, let me talk to him. I
him.
want to award the rubber chicken of the week.
Uh-oh.
The
What?
rubber,
What?
the rubber chicken of the week goes to anyone who said that QueensWay was happening and there was no support for the QueensLink.
Mm.
So anyone who said that, you get the rubber chicken of the week. Right? This is for you. You need a
The
sound
rubber,
effect on there, like a
rubber
clucking sound or
chicken
something.
of the week.
Rubber chicken
Wow.
of the week. Yeah. Like we need to add like a clucking, like a or something like that to that.
You should sample that right there. You're clucking. Yeah.
So there you
That's
have it.
yeah. Well, that sounds like it's good news and potentially help push the project forward.
Yeah, yeah. And we've always said that, right? Put it to the people. Why are you so afraid with asking the people what they want? Isn't that what public service is about?
True, true, true. So,
Speaking of putting it to the
uh-oh.
people, we did a poll last week, right?
We did do a poll last week, and this was about the incident that happened with Councilwoman Susan Zhang. I think I forgot
Strong?
the pronunciation.
Strong?
Zhang?
I think so.
Zhang. Um, she allegedly bit a police officer during a protest where the community was protesting the placement of a homeless shelter, saying there was no representation or consultation with the community about this shelter being put in their neighborhood. And things seemed to get out of hand, and she was arrested for allegedly biting the police officer. So we asked, should the New York City Councilwoman who allegedly bit a police chief lose her seat if convicted?
Mm.
Um, and so Results were 64% yes, 36% no. She should not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did the people saying no provide any explanation as to why they thought she should stay in office?
Well, one person says only if police who attack citizens are convicted.
Wait, what?
Um,
What does that mean? She should
yeah.
lose her seat if police are convicted?
And basically saying that, she committed an act against the police, but police commit acts against the public and they're hardly ever convicted. So if they
Okay.
start getting convicted, then she should be held, what's good for the goose, good for the gander type of thing.
I mean, but you are seeing more accountability there. Wasn't the
We're
police
seeing
officer?
some.
Yeah, the
Yeah, we're
police
seeing
officer
some.
in Illinois with Sonia Massey, was it? Wasn't he charged at least with murder?
I don't know what he was charged with, but it seems he is being at least going through the system. Who knows
Yeah,
how the result's going to be?
right,
But I mean, he never should have been on the force in the first place.
right.
Um, but
All right.
yeah,
Accountability on both sides, on all sides is good.
yeah,
But
yeah, definitely, definitely. So,
it's kind of weird, though, to say that she should only be held accountable if police are always held accountable. I mean, does that absolve her of her accountability?
no, but it's saying that if police can get away with it, why can't the public? And a lot of people feel that way. Like, why are they doing these things to us? But it could have been uh, it could have been I'm forgetting my word here.
Rhetorical?
Kind of type of thing. Who knows?
Yeah.
Another comment was, put it up to the voters. They question though, why was she being arrested in the first place? If you're breaking the law, getting arrested is part of the deal. Civil disobedience should be nonviolent, even in a rough arrest. So that was one of the things that she said was that, and I don't know if she's completely come out and said that she did it, but she was saying that, you know, she was being mistreated during her arrest.
And for those who are unaware, she was protesting a proposed homeless shelter in her district.
Hmm. Right.
And so there was a big protest going on. It got kind of rowdy. I think she or people close to her said that she was trying to help an 81-year-old constituent who, I don't know if the police were roughhousing her or trying to push her back or something like that, but she was intervening, I think, as I understand it, she was intervening between police and this older woman. And that's how she got caught in the mix.
And she also said that, there was the police used excessive force against her when they were arresting her, and some of her actions were a response to police mistreatment. I don't think she's come out and said she didn't come out directly said, yeah, I bit that dude, but
You can see
um
the bite marks on his arm. I mean, he was certainly
he
bitten.
got bit by somebody.
Yeah.
That's for sure. He got bit by somebody. That was not a small bite. That
All
was
right.
teeth went in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Isn't that kind of bizarre behavior? I mean, maybe it's just you get caught up in the moment or something. I don't know. But to me,
it could be. It is. It is
trying to
beyond.
strip away this context, right? And because you can say, oh well, there's not enough accountability here, or she was trying to intervene there, or whatever it was. Things got out of hand. But just the basic idea of an elected official biting the hell out of a cop and drawing blood and leaving that kind of mark, like it seems excessive, right? Regardless of what she was trying to prove, it
Well,
seems
yeah.
much.
And the thing is, right, it does seem a lot, you wouldn't expect especially adults to be biting people, right?
Right.
At the same time, to look at it on the other angle, if she was being mistreated, if she was being excessively and forcefully handled, then in those situations, instincts will kick in, preservation will kick in, and you try to get people off you the
Hmm.
best that you can. And I think
Not
those things
aware that
aren't
she was
taken.
being
I'm sorry?
arrested. Was she not aware that she was being arrested? Was she not aware that it was a police officer? Because it seems even
But
if
that doesn't matter
possible,
if the police are using excessive force. Like you
it
could
does
say,
matter though in terms of biting someone. First of all, it's reckless to say the least, right? I mean, you can end up being
sure,
shot easily in that situation.
sure, absolutely. But I'm saying you can also, again, your self-preservation to kick in. If you're being mistreated, like we just saw, what was it? There was a video that I saw yesterday where a man was being handcuffed, and there were three police officers, and he's like, "What am I being arrested for?" And the police officer just said, "Shut up," and punched him in the face,
Hmm.
and just went back to handcuffing him like it was nothing. Um, he handled it well. He just kind of chilled. He's like, but imagine you're being punched in the face, you're being forcefully put down, like you're going to try to protect yourself in whatever way, especially if it feels like a desperate situation. Now, that's not excusing what she did, but I think those types of things need to be also taken into account when we're dealing with situations like this, because it can be part human nature when that preservation kicks in. How it displays itself can be
Right.
various ways, but
Well,
yeah,
should it then depend on the result of the case, right? Because she is being charged and she
right,
will have due process. She'll have the opportunity to present
sure,
whatever defenses she wants to present. And so if it comes out that she was acting in self-defense, maybe she won't be convicted of a major crime. And there's going to be a difference also between felony potentially and a misdemeanor, right? Because if she's
right,
convicted of a felony, she'll automatically lose her seat on the city
mm,
council as soon as she's convicted of that felony. But if it's a misdemeanor, let's say, then there's some discretion there, right? Then it's a matter of, does the city council believe that she should be expelled or punished,
right,
disciplined in some way? So she'll have that opportunity to make her case, right? Maybe she'll be able to provide evidence, right? It was a big crowded rally. A lot of people were out there with cameras and filming what was going on. And you saw even footage on the news of, I mean, maybe she'll be able to show that these officers were acting with excessive force, and
right,
maybe that will mitigate at least some of
right,
the blame, right, on her.
right. Yeah,
So
I mean, if someone put it in the comments saying that if she can convince a jury of her version of events, then she has a better shot. I mean, it could sound like a self-defense type of situation, depending on how the version of events played out. Um, so we'll see. Someone said let the voters decide. But again, if it goes to, like you said, if it goes to a felony, then she'd go out anyway.
right, right, and the voters in her district, I can't speak for all of them, but from what I saw, she was greeted like a hero when she came back to the
Mm,
district and she gave a speech. The constituents seemed to really appreciate her efforts in fighting
right,
back, and I think that stems largely from fighting back against the city for this proposed shelter. And also,
right.
she threw in comments that her constituents have been mistreated by police
Yeah,
historically, right? And so people seem to be taking her side locally, at least the ones you see local about it when you do
right,
footage of her speaking to her constituents. So does that represent everyone? Well, maybe not, right? That is what people will decide the
right,
ballot is. And I think
right.
there's validity in that point as well, that in a democracy, we let the people decide if they want the police buyer to represent them. Well, I guess that's their prerogative.
Yeah, at the same time, it is, and then, but you kind of do want a little bit more decorum in the office.
Sure.
But again, I think we have to look at situations for whatever the surrounding circumstances might have been to see what
Right.
kind of response it was.
And who decides how much decorum is appropriate? I mean, it seems to me
Right.
that's a question for the voters.
Right. Yeah. So for the voters and for the court. So
True, right? If it
yes.
crosses the line into a felony, certainly.
Right. So it's gonna, yeah. I mean, she's gonna have to make her case. And like I said, I haven't read anything where she said, yeah, I did bite him, but they're gonna have to decide whether her response was appropriate for whatever actions that she was faced with.
Right, right. Seems crazy. The whole thing seems kind of bizarre, right?
Right.
But hey, we'll see. It seems like the majority of people in our poll say that she should lose her seat.
Right.
Okay.
So
All right.
we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. And speaking of
This
polls,
is, just before we move
yeah,
on to this, kind of reminded me of what we covered some months back with the councilwoman from
also
uh,
Brooklyn.
also Brooklyn, Ina Vernikov, the one at the pro-Palestinian rally who brought the gun. And it was another question of whether,
Right,
elected officials are behaving befitting their office.
right.
So
Absolutely.
what's going on in Brooklyn?
I was gonna say something must be in the water there, right? Both South Brooklyn too, right? I believe both kind of the same part of Brooklyn.
Okay, rough. Is it rough? Rough like that?
You know, it is an area I'll say where people want to fight back. They feel like they're being dumped on. They feel like they're not
Sure,
favored by the city.
sure.
And even though we saw in this case, the city's argument was that I don't think there was any such homeless shelter in that entire district. Nonetheless, I think just generally speaking, people felt like they were dumped on by the city. You get that kind of attitude in the Rockaways too, and I think a lot of that is deserved, right? Is earned in terms of the way the city treats the area. And so South Brooklyn, another one of those type areas where you'll find people who I think want to fight back. It's like they've had enough of
Right.
being mistreated or what they perceive to be mistreatment by the city. And when a local official does something that the rest of us might look at from afar and be like, oh, what are you doing? Where's the decorum in that? To them, it's like finally someone's fighting for us.
Sure. And I think that needs to also be considered when looking at situations.
Mhm.
You know, it kind of plays to what was the statement that Dr. King said that riots are the language of the unheard.
Right.
So some people can say that, that's, that behavior shouldn't happen, but people are pushed and frustrated to a point where they feel this is their only recourse. And so, those things should also be taken into account.
Yeah, there's definitely desperation in there,
Yeah.
right? And I think
Yeah.
that's the part that sometimes isn't presented. That's the context that sometimes we're missing.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Yeah.
justify it necessarily, but
Right.
it is part of the larger picture, right? That some
Yeah.
folks are desperate, and why are they so desperate? I mean, that all needs to be examined.
Yeah. Why did those people throw all that tea into the harbor?
Right.
You gotta, it's like, yeah, you shouldn't do that, but why? What was the point behind it? And that's another point of finding nuance in some of these things, so that we can have honest discussions, and judgments on things.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, from one poll to another poll to another poll, right? Because the poll we were going to ask for next week related to this new proposal that the president put out about Supreme Court justices, right? He is saying
Right.
we should be term limited to 18 years on the bench.
18 years.
Yeah. Still got
And the
time.
president and the presidential immunity should be removed, and ethics rules for the judges should be stricter.
Right, right. And I believe it was Elena Kagan, the Supreme Court justice, who came out in favor of the ethics rules, saying that justices policing themselves hasn't been working. So we need something
No,
different. When it
no.
comes to the presidential immunity, that will require a constitutional amendment, not just an act of legislation, if you're going to overturn the Supreme Court's ruling. So
Right.
that's obviously some heavy lifting there. When it
Yeah.
comes to the
He doesn't have enough time to get that done.
no, clearly not. When it comes to this, even right, the limit of 18 years that you can do with the simple act of Congress and the presidential signature, but realistically, will that happen with the current makeup of the Congress? No, I don't think it's likely at
No.
all. The White House, I don't believe, is responding to inquiries about whether that's realistic. I think it's more something aspirational that they're throwing out there now, which
Yeah.
maybe will play into some voters' minds when they go and vote, right? Because they're saying, hey, listen, this is a good idea, but Republicans in the House or in Congress generally don't want this. A Republican president wouldn't want this. And so I'm going to vote accordingly.
Right. I think it's more of performative to me, because it's not like this is the first time that there have been calls to put some sort of reforms on the Supreme Court or limits, especially after, Trump installed the conservative majority. And he's waiting till now to announce these types of reforms, a few months before the end of his term and after he's dropped out of the race. It's kind of
Well,
performative. Like, you should have done this 3 years ago, or made a
true.
motion.
But I guess here's the other side to that. Him no longer being a candidate frees him up to be bolder, maybe, than he
Sure.
otherwise would have. Maybe, right, there was an impulse to play it safe in certain respects. Now he doesn't need, of course, he's not trying to screw things up for the Democratic ticket, so he can't go too crazy. But I think he's thinking of, we talked about this last week, what is his legacy going to look like? That's what he's really focused on now as president. It isn't all about being reelected, right? It's about
Right.
how I serve out my final few months in office. What other big ticket items can I put out there? And this, I think, is one of them. People compare the president to FDR in
Mm.
terms of the major items FDR was able to get through, right? You saw the infrastructure, for example, under Biden, and you saw a lot of transformative change under this current administration. Well, we know FDR had what they called a court packing plan, right? Where he was trying to add more justices to the Supreme Court. And then there was that famous, what they call it, the switch in time to save nine, right? Some deal was made to keep it at nine justices. But this was out of FDR's playbook. It seems like Biden is mirroring that in some way. Maybe it's intentional, maybe it's deliberate to get those comparisons to continue.
Mm. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I think the Supreme Court justice term limits would have been favorable for both sides. Maybe not the politicians, but the supporters. I think Democrat and conservative voters are all in favor of term limits for the Supreme Court justices. I don't think the party is in favor, the GOP party is in favor, especially now that they've got a conservative majority on the Supreme Court. I
All
don't
right.
think they'd be,
So I was
be
going to ask you, why do you think that is? Do you think it's because they want to keep the ones that they have now?
yeah. Because if they've got a conservative, I mean, think about it. They've got a conservative majority that's going to last for the next 30 years
Right.
or 40 years, and they've already gotten so much stuff done with this conservative Supreme Court that they've wanted to do for the past 50 years.
Yeah.
They altered the voting rights. They've got rid of Roe v. Wade. They got rid of affirmative action. Like there's just so much that they've able to been accomplished. They've been campaigning on for decades. No, they don't want to change it up now. They're getting what they want.
Right. And maybe this is something for the voter to keep in mind because we talk about how when you vote for a president, you should think about this type of thing, not just about the personalities that you're voting for, but what is the makeup of the Supreme Court going to look like and how much influence
Mhm.
does the president have? Even if they're in office for 4 years, they can appoint a few justices that can drastically alter the makeup of the Supreme Court and affect policy, affect rights, affect your life for generations to come, right? So
Absolutely.
it isn't just a 4 year election as of now because you don't have these term limits. It really has far reaching, long lasting consequences. And maybe by talking about it now, it's bringing it more to the forefront of the voter's mind that when we go vote, these things are all at stake here because we don't have an 18-year limit. We have a lifetime limit, right? And
Right.
that carries a lot of weight. There's a lot of gravity to that, you know?
Yeah.
18 years is a lot, but we have to keep in mind what this means, right? As of now, you have a lifetime appointment. And so once you get someone on Supreme Court, they can be there for as long as they want until they die or choose to retire voluntarily. I think only one, correct me if I'm wrong, only one Supreme Court justice was successfully impeached in history, if that. I know there's been efforts, articles of impeachment introduced throughout the years, including
Right.
recently, has been removed,
Currently.
has been removed from the bench, though. That almost never happens. So
Right.
when
And
you
we
if you were to switch to this 18 years, what you'd be saying is whoever the president is in 18 years will get to name the replacement. So
right.
easily have a different philosophy, right? Judicial philosophy on Supreme Court, just based on who's the president. And these appointments won't last as long as they do.
That could also introduce something that maybe shouldn't be introduced in that the parties would start to become a little bit more involved. If you're saying like this conservative justice in 18 years is out, that election is coming up and they know they have to leave, the party could be pushing them to retire while they have a conservative president,
Sure.
so that they can make sure that they can keep that position.
Right. That absolutely will happen because now
And
you
then you have that influence.
similar, but it's more speculative. Right now, it's
Right.
when you're getting old. we don't mean to
Right.
offend you, but we don't know how much longer you have to live, and
Right.
maybe now would be a good time to step down. But they can turn around and say, "Hey, listen, I might be 85, but I plan on living until I'm 110." You know what I mean? So
Right.
they get that concrete, unless they're very sick
Right.
or something. Now, like you said, it'll be very obvious, it'll be very clear when that 18 years is coming up. So if they're in year 16 or year 17, and there's a big presidential election coming up the next year, there's gonna be a lot of pressure on them to step down and let someone of their own party, let's say, appoint the successor.
Right. And that could potentially introduce more misconduct and corruption,
Mm,
because then it becomes a collusion sort of situation,
right.
um, to maintain a certain status quo or a certain political bias balance on the Supreme Court.
Sure. And to be fair, this is why they created the system of lifetime appointments, right? Because the idea behind that was that they were supposed to be removed from political considerations. If they're in there
Right.
for life, they never have to worry about being reappointed or reelected, or right.
Right.
They can't lose their seat in theory, so they should be free to rule their conscience. What they got to lose? So you know what I mean?
Right.
Take me out. So there are no political winds at my back. We see that
Right.
that system doesn't necessarily work as intended. At least it's maybe a little bit more ideological or aspirational for that to
It
truly be
could
how
be,
things work. And so
yeah.
that's why there are calls to narrow it to 18 years, right? We're seeing at least now this is moved that the lifetime appointment doesn't work for us.
Well, yeah, or there could be need for much stricter ethics codes, or consequences when there's clear collusion or there's clear signs of misconduct, like Clarence Thomas. There should be vehicles to be able to, bring him up or remove him from office if we see that a conservative, or not conservative, a Supreme Court justice has been compromised. There should
Right?
be some way of remedying that without waiting until they decide they want to walk away.
Sure. Yeah, you realize though, when you're dealing with impeachment through Congress, that by definition is political. I know that they're supposed
Yeah.
to, like an impartial jury and all, but you see how this happens, right? Oftentimes they vote along
Yeah.
party line. So
Right.
maybe it's best to do that with an independent ethics board or disciplinary board.
Right.
I don't know. Um, it's clear, I think, to me that people want some kind of reform. And I think
Right.
everything that you do is going to have a pro and a con, right? You have to kind of weigh it. But uh,
Yeah.
it seems to me, and we'll put this out, we'll see what the people think. I don't think most people agree with lifetime tenure anymore.
Mm.
I think you even said it yourself that maybe the party will oppose it, but most Democrats and
I
conservatives probably will support the idea of limiting it.
Probably because there've been, because so many people on all sides are jaded with um politicians, politics, leaders, all
Yeah.
of that stuff. And so that idea of saying, yeah, you have a term limit, I think a lot of voters would back that. Even, without even thinking about the possibility for negative consequences. It's just the frustration, right? That they feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, this works both ways. It cuts both ways, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a liberal and you think, okay, we've got these liberal justices on, they're young and they're great and they can be here forever. Well, you pass something like this,
Hmm.
18 years from now, maybe there's a conservative president who gets rid of them all. Maybe they're still young, maybe they're still in their 50s or whatever, but replaced by all these conservatives who otherwise would have been there longer if you didn't do this. And
Right. So
you
it's
know,
not,
it's
I've always said
both
this is
sides.
not, yeah, this is not a magic bullet here, right? This is
Right.
not a quick, a perfect fix. Even, extending the size of Congress, the Supreme Court. It's not a perfect fix. It's still going to be an imbalance regardless, because it has to be.
Yeah.
And so,
I just
it's,
had an idea though that actually maybe is a good reason to do this because we were talking about knowing when the term is going to be up and that having a role maybe in influencing the judges. But what about influencing the voters in a sense that if you have a presidential election coming up and you know that let's say five of them are going to be going to be up, that's going to make a major difference one would hope, in the election, because people are saying, okay, now I'm really voting directly on the makeup of the Supreme Court. We know it's finite. It's not speculative anymore. It's not like, well, someone might die. We know these seats are coming up next year.
I think the general population, I don't think it would connect with them like that. I think
You know, if
for
they're putting it out,
political
the campaigns
heads,
are putting that out though, because now
oh,
the
they'll be
campaigns
putting it
will be
out.
advertising that. That would be all their ads and everything.
Oh
Hey,
yeah,
listen,
yeah, they'll be.
in 2040, whatever, right? These seats are coming up. So you vote for me if you want like-minded people on the court. I mean, I would think that would be part of the messaging.
Oh no, I think that definitely would be part of the message. I'm just doubting that it would sway the majority of voters. It would sway a lot of voters, especially
Yeah.
people who vote often and understand, the gravity of the situation. But I think the majority of voters probably won't think about it that much. It'll just be more political noise coming at them, right? There's just so many messages, right? It's like, yeah, yeah, we know they're
Well,
gonna be on the board.
that could be true for the majority, but even if it moves the needle a little bit, maybe there's value in that.
True. This is
I
so
think we want more people paying attention to that kind of thing, right? We
yeah,
always say that when you vote for president, know that you're voting for the Supreme Court more than anything.
right. And yeah, people, I think it's, you know, none of this stuff would happen, or at least less of this stuff would happen, these issues, if the people were paying more attention and
Mm,
exercising the civic duty that the system is predicated on,
yeah,
right? So, for example, if your politician, your senators or whatever are doing corrupt things, then ideally they'd be voted out. They wouldn't be put back in, right? Someone like Trump wouldn't be back on the ticket because the electorate would reject a convicted felon on there. Like the idea is that the people participate in this in a way to hold everybody accountable, but we see that doesn't necessarily happen because people, they have got lives to deal with, they've got their own pressures, they're not thinking about it in this way and all that. So, who's to say if that would work in that regard as well?
right. So that could actually be a negative to the
Right.
proposal, I guess, because that would insert more political decision making, or
Hmm.
at least task that to an electorate that you're saying may not be up to the challenge at all times.
Yeah, yeah. And the ones who would be are the ones who are already paying attention, who already and in a lot of cases, are trying to, or people trying to influence things would
Mm,
have another arrow in their quiver.
right. All right. So let's see what the people think about this one. Hopefully, they will think it through as we are and not just jump to a yes or a no, right? Give
Right.
it some thought. But the poll question of the week is, do you believe Supreme Court justices should be limited to serving 18 years?
Yeah. And I'm curious about 18. Why did he come up with 18? I haven't seen what makes it 18.
Right, right, right. Why not 20 or something like that? Because you do want to give them space, right? You don't want it to be a quick turnaround where you're putting a new justice on the court every 2 years, every 4 years, because
Mm,
you don't have any stability. But don't forget, these decisions are highly consequential. I mean, if you
yeah.
take something like Roe v. Wade, for example, or we talked about the Chevron doctrine, right? All these major constitutional questions. Could you
Right.
imagine if you kept replacing those justices every couple of years and they just changed it all the time, went back, we
Right.
have Roe, we don't, we have it, we don't, we have Chevron, we don't, we have back and forth.
Right.
You wouldn't want that, right? That would be no way to have stability in the country. Your
I think
constitutional
that's another good
framework
point.
would be crazy, right? 18 years gives it time. I mean, that's not a very short time. 18 years is pretty substantial, but why 18 as opposed to 16 or 20? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's another good point that you mentioned there. With having the lifetime appointments, there's a greater chance of some of these decisions standing for a longer term and
Right.
there being some kind of stability in the
Yeah.
way that society works,
The
the way that
law, right? Because let's face it,
in the
all
law.
of our law stems from what the Supreme Court decides, right? And then it
Right.
trickles down to lower courts. They must rule in accordance with the framework the Supreme Court establishes. And so
Right.
if you had that constant turnover, the law
Right.
would be in a constant state of flux. There would be no established law ever on anything. It would just be, well, we'll see what happens next year. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? We could commit murder yesterday. It was
Right.
okay.
Right. Or if you want to do something, well, you can't do it now, but just wait it out. Next year you have all new judges on the court, and I'm sure
Yeah, we'll try it. We'll try it
yeah,
next
try it
year.
again next year. So yeah, you don't
Yeah.
want that. I was just thinking maybe 18. This is spitballing here. Maybe I said why 18? Why not 16 or 20? Could it be they did not want it to be in an increment of four because the presidential election is every 4 years, and so they don't want it to come up on every presidential year. They
It
want
could be.
that
It could be because then it would really tie it to the presidential candidates
right,
and the parties even more.
right, right.
So that could be
Like,
one way to try to combat that. What
yeah,
I'm really interested and I think to me might be even more effective than the term limits, is this binding enforceable code of ethics that they would have to take part in. Because I think that's where the issue, one of the biggest issues is their code of ethics, their integrity is being compromised. And if there's a way for them to face consequences for breaking that, then we might have a better court in that regard.
right, right. Yeah. And the question would be, what would be the punishment? Would it be kind of like how a lawyer is disciplined, where they can be sanctioned in various ways and ultimately face disbarment for an offense egregious enough? Maybe something similar, where maybe they're suspended for a while. Maybe they can be taken off the bench at a certain point, depending on the
I think
nature of the violation.
yeah, we should probably bring back flogging. I think that might be a good thing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see where all this goes. I did
Yeah.
want to, before we wrapped up, mention my Joe Biden story, because we know he's not seeking another term. And quite to the surprise, I would say, of many, I think we even called it a pipe dream at one point because it wasn't looking like that was likely. But we did
Right.
think if it was going to happen, it would have to happen very quickly, and it did. So I do want to pay my respects because I got the opportunity to speak with him on a call, and I always thought it was kind of cool that he took the time to get on the phone. Now, he was vice president at the time, and President Obama was tasking him with reaching out to district offices around the country. He was trying to find legislative offices in different states to push this promise program, which was legislation for free community college. The goal was to have a national program, but the states, as they call them, are the laboratories of democracy, right? Let's try it out in the states. And so in New York, they identified our office. Senator Sanders, James Sanders, I was his council legislative director at the time. I believe he was the first or one of the first state legislators to endorse Barack Obama when he ran for president. And so
Mhm.
obviously they didn't forget him. They called us and asked if we would be interested in carrying the bill in New York. And so we were, and we got Assembly Member Shot on the Assembly side to carry the bill because you have to have a Senate bill and an Assembly bill. Of course, we're just impressed about it, talking about it, but it really was experimental in the sense of, okay, how is this going to look, and where's the money going to come from? You're saying that you want community colleges to be free or freer, but are you going to offer that to everyone? I mean, what's the cost of that? Obviously, in New York, it's going to be more costly than doing that in some other states. So how is that going to look exactly, right? And
Right.
that was what we were playing with, right, in terms of putting the bill together and thinking about this. I spoke with people from CUNY and SUNY, right, the City University, State University of New York. They had advocates who were for it as well, and they had these different ideas. It can maybe come in the form of a scholarship. It can be, maybe something like the state is footing your community college bill, but with the catch or the give back that, okay, once your education is paid for, you're committing to work in the state and give back to our economy and not just take the degree and move elsewhere. So there were these different ideas being floated around. And I was in frequent touch with the White House at the time, but it was the vice president's office, right? It was Joe Biden staffers who would call me and ask about the progress of the bill in New York. And we would have these conversations. At a certain point, I got a call from the White House saying that the vice president, Joe Biden, wants to get on the phone, wants to do a conference call with you guys to talk about the bill, the legislation, and kind of just be available to speak because he was tasked with overseeing this or coordinating this project nationwide. So I immediately talked to the senator and I said, listen, the vice president wants to get on the phone today, and I want you to be able to take the call. And he said to me, why don't you take it? He said, you've been working with them on this the whole way. Why don't you get on the phone? And so I did. It was me, the staffers, I think some of the other people that we were working with in Albany or in state, and Joe Biden. He himself got on the phone and we just had a conversation about the legislation, about the program. And I remember one of the topics that came up was, how do you recommend funding this? What has worked in other states? Because you said it's been successful elsewhere. Tell me what you did there, right? And I think Tennessee came up as an example. And Joe Biden had said that what worked in Tennessee was they found a philanthropist of some kind. He said it was like a Bloomberg type guy who had a ton of money and he was willing to pay for scholarships for students. And so he said, if you can find someone like that in New York, which is kind of funny, right? He's like, just find a billionaire, you'll be good. But these were the ideas that were
And then
out there.
yeah,
You
how
know,
long did that last though?
well, I actually don't know. We could look this up, what Tennessee
Right.
is currently doing and how they're doing it. I can say that in New York, what ended up happening was the governor adopted a version of that for what he called the Excelsior Scholarship. And so it became a state funded scholarship. And there may have been private people, private actors who put money into it. I'm not sure. I'm sure they get tax write offs or whatever, credits, whatever. I don't know how that works, but ultimately it does come from the state. And there were some of those strings put on it, right? Like we'll fund part of your education, but you are promising to work in New York. And so, we want more engineers, more scientists, more, whatever in New York. We want to make sure that we get those, but that you actually contribute to the state and the state's economy. You don't just get a free ride and then go to Texas or California or something like that and use those skills that we gave you here. So that
Right.
was part of what ultimately came out. But it all started with the call from the White House and the vice president's office, and it included an actual conversation that I had with Joe Biden at the time. That's something that will always stick in my mind, especially as he went on to become president, right? Forever grateful for that experience and just thought it was cool that he took the time to do that.
Yeah, that's real dope. Get him on the calls, get him on Nuance, talk to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, hey Joe, remember me? What's up?
Well, yeah, it's funny. So when it kind of wrapped up, they said to me, well, Mike, you have friends in the White House now. I'm like, well, great. I got friends in the White House now. But that was 2016. Obviously we know what happened in November of 2016. So those friends would no longer be in the White House, and we weren't able to do some of the things we were hoping to do. Some of those perks, like when they have the Easter event on the White House lawn. I don't know whether they roll the eggs down, whatever they do. They have like an Easter ceremony or whatever.
Right,
I
right.
would get invites to that, right? Visit the Rose Garden, whatever. It's like, well, those perks quickly expired because a whole new administration came in the next year.
Yeah, it's over. Game over.
Yeah, yeah. So,
So,
all right. Well, we go to the bottom line.
is that on me?
Yes.
Ah, okay. I think well let's go to what we started off with and this idea where the people seem to be speaking in regards to the QueensLink and just have politicians should take note of what the actual people want and pay attention to those things. Those should definitely factor into the decision heavily because that's what they're sent there to do is to represent the will of the people. And so if those are the indications that people are getting, or the politicians are getting from the people, and we've seen this with things like even Roe v. Wade, where most of the country does support it, this on the QueensLink here, where most people were looking for healthcare options as well. Uh, the parties and the politicians from those parties need to take these types of things into consideration to be able to work towards what the people want and work for the people instead of working for themselves and working for the hopes of the party. So that's the bottom line.
Well said. And don't be a rubber chicken.
Don't be a rubber chicken. Yeah.
All right. Well, people can find us wherever podcasts can be found. And check us out on YouTube as well. We've got clips from the show. Join the conversation and let us know what you think. This is Nuance. As always, we've got work to do. We'll catch you next time.